Oh gosh. Okay, I tried to do some kung fu outside of the theater after watching Shang-Chi. Not a good idea. Trust me, I'm not trained, and now I'm hurt. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today I'm diving into my spoiler-free thoughts for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is hitting theaters September 3rd. And guys, I am so excited to finally talk about this movie because it has been such a long time in the making. Ever since I even heard about this film, I was already on board. A huge thank you to the team over at Disney for giving me the chance to watch this in person for review. And yes, let me tell you, if you can safely make it out to a theater, this is a must-see on the big screen. The movie is directed by Destin, Cretton, and it's starring Simu Liu, Awkwafina, Leung, and Yeoh, just to name a few. Because guys, this is a huge ensemble cast, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But hey, if you're unfamiliar with what Shang-Chi is all about, let's dive into the story just a little bit. The movie surrounds Shang-Chi, who was living an ordinary lifestyle, valeting cars with his best friend Katie, but now he's forced to confront his past after being drawn back into the Ten Rings organization by his father, Wenwu. And let me tell y'all, the story is much more layered than what we just talked about. But hey, before we get into my reviews and I tell you why I love this film and, well, the little things that don't work too well for me, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where we break down movies like this early all the time, so you're not going to want to miss out. Go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell, y'all. Hit the thumbs up button if you're also a big fan of Shang-Chi and you're excited for the film, and get loud down below when you see this movie and let me know what you thought of it, who was your favorite character, and how excited does this make you for the rest of the MCU, because guys, there are 2 end credit scenes and you're not going to want to miss them. Alrighty guys, so let's get right into what makes this movie so enjoyable, and it really starts with our cast, which is just full of chemistry and wonderful performances. And it starts with Simu Liu, who I have been a fan of since Kim's Convenience, but he leads this cast, and let me tell you, he is becoming a star right in front of our very eyes. He has this natural ability to charm audiences, and he's very witty when he needs to be, but then he also gives the spotlight to others when the story calls for it. And you start to notice that towards the end of the second act and into the third act, where even though he becomes a little bit more of a supporting character, I love the fact that he's still able to command the screen when the time calls for it. So again, he's just the star in the making, guys. And then you have Leung, who is the next standout for me. He plays Wenwu, the leader of the Ten Rings and Shang-Chi's father. And let me tell y'all, the family drama that they have, oh boy. But for those who love martial arts movies, you know that Leung has been a legend in cinema for a while, and it's so beautiful to see him delivering, quite honestly, the most layered performance of this film. And when you couple that with hand-to-hand combat sequences with Fa Chen and pretty much anyone else he comes in contact with, you have yourself a beautiful 1-2 punch of a performance. And I feel like we also need to talk about Menger Zhang, who is making her debut in Shang-Chi. She plays Zhang Ling, who is Shang-Chi's sister, and let me tell y'all, when she teams up with Shang-Chi and the gang, I about got out of my seat and clapped. Not only does she provide a great contrast to Shang-Chi and his motivations, but I love the fact that she's able to stand on her own, and also, I'm sorry, but there is this thing where she's swinging around, I don't even know what to call it, her weapon, and it made me smile. Honestly, it is one of the best performances of the movie, just simply for the fact that every time she was on screen, she stole each scene. And of course, there's Awkwafina, who plays Katie, Shang-Chi's best friend. I've liked her since Crazy Rich Asians, and here she's just as good. Sure, not every joke lands, but I do think that she is the great comic relief when the movie needs it. But in that third act, there's a decent amount of character development and a very interesting arc for her character, Katie, as the film gets closer to the end. And honestly guys, I could go on and on with this ensemble cast. There's the outstanding Yeoh, who makes her presence felt in that second half as Ying Nan. There's Fa Chen as Jiang Li, who is right here on set with me today. But she's so graceful in every fight scene and has a small but meaningful role here. And even the supporting cast with gems such as Ronnie Chang as John, who provides comedic relief in that second act. And trust me guys, it really is the cast here that makes this movie such a rewatchable film for me, because I want to go back and appreciate these performances in a new way. I was focusing so much on our leads, but there are so many gems in our supporting cast as well. Now let's dive into the technical side of Shang-Chi, which begins with the direction by Destin Cretton. Now the only film of his that I know is Just Mercy, but what he did there was actually put Michael B. Jordan in the best position to win. And here in Shang-Chi, Destin Cretton helps pave the way for Simu Liu, but honestly what I loved most about his direction was found in the first 2 acts. He really proves that he can tell a very beautiful personal story and highlight the human element in each of his characters. And of course you have to give credit to the script here too, but I just believe that Destin and Cretton's vision helped flesh out the world building as well, which really just adds to the mysticism and the allure of Shang-Chi. And as far as origin movies go in the MCU, guys, Destin and Cretton has directed one of the best. And then there's the cinematography, which I was really excited for after watching one of those earlier trailers. And listen y'all, if you don't know who Bill Pope is by now, I'm glad you do if you watch Shang-Chi and it's the first work you've ever seen of his, but guys, he worked on Spider-Man 2, The Matrix, and I mean this guy knows his way around a movie set. And not only that, his style is very distinct and unique, and it really makes this film feel personal when needed and epic when it's appropriate. I loved how all the hand-to-hand combat scenes were filmed, and I love how the action really was just easy to track. So Bill Pope just really puts his touch on this film, and it's so distinct, it's so noticeable, and I loved it. Alright guys, so we still have to talk about the visual effects and score, but let's dive into the visual effects themselves, because there's going to be a lot of discourse around the third act of Shang-Chi, which features your typical big MCU action finale. I loved it. I thought the mysticism of Ta Lo was great, the dragons, the soul suckers, the animals. Did I mention the soul suckers? But man, it looked so beautiful, it really worked for me, and everything looked very clean. Now when we get this big dose of visual effects, is it tonally different from the rest of the movie? Sure, it's less grounded, but to me, the movie needed to get here to really serve as a pivotal character moment for both Shang-Chi and Wenwu. And then there's the score by Joel P. West, which blends together everything I love about Kung Fu movies and Asian cinema. It's amazing. The instruments are just beautiful. It's vibrating. It is so amazing to see how when both of our characters, for example, in the beginning of the movie with Wenwu and Jiang Li, when they're fighting, it's graceful and all the instruments really match that. And the score rises when it's necessary. And for me, it was never distracting from what we were getting on screen. It just adds to the film. And those are some of my favorite compositions. So Joel P. West just knocked my socks off here. And before we head into the negatives, can we talk about Shang-Chi delivering the absolute best fight choreography in the MCU? Yes, this is a huge testament to Brad Allen, who is a protege basically, or was a protege to Jackie Chan, and unfortunately he passed before Shang-Chi was released worldwide in theaters. But man, that stunt coordination, the choreography itself, the hand-to-hand combat, it's not only the best in the MCU, but I think it's the best I've seen in a film in a good amount of years, probably the last 5 years or so, because this is just excellent, guys. It all kicks off with Shang-Chi on the bus, honestly, and you know that scene from the trailer, but there's also a nice change of pace when we get slower hand-to-hand combat moments with Jiang Li. I was just in awe the entire time, guys. And I should have known all of this from the beginning of the movie, guys, because when Wenwu puts the full power of the 10 rings on display, yeah, my mind was blown. Alright, so I'm gushing about Shang-Chi, but guys, for as much as I love this film, there are some things that don't work here, and the humor here is at the top of the list for me. A lot of critics after seeing the film were saying that this movie is one of the funniest in the MCU, and while it does have some pretty good and clever jokes, I don't think that the humor was always working for me. It was incredibly hit and miss. For example, Awkwafina, for as good of a performance as she gave, was consistently swinging for the fences with every line up until that third act. And for me, there are moments where jokes are necessary, but then there's that MCU formula that comes into play where I start to think, oh, okay, alrighty, I understand, and the MCU is supposed to be different. It's not supposed to be dark like the DC Extended Universe, but there are elements in this movie where I feel like humor wasn't necessary. We didn't need comedic relief, just transition to that next scene, but the movie sometimes really tries to jam in those jokes, and I don't think it works out too well. And eventually, towards the end of that second act, guys, we get introduced to a certain character that changes the entire film from a tone standpoint. But listen, I'm not saying the humor here is the absolute worst I've seen in movies this year or the worst in the MCU, but again, I just wished it were worked better within the story and it wasn't always trying to swing for the fences. And the last negative about this movie that I have, guys, is this tie-in with the Mandarin from Iron Man 3. It was okay, but I mean, I can't say anything else about that because again, this is a spoiler-free review, but what I will say is that I think that they maybe took it a little far. It was up and down for me. Like, I like the decision, and I also don't like a lot of the things about the decision to go in this direction. So the movie there for me is where it was at its worst, and it got a little rocky up until we got into Ta Lo. So guys, that's the positives and the negatives for Shang-Chi. So what do I think overall? Y'all, I love this movie. We have never seen anything like Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in the MCU. This is a wholly unique experience, one that I don't think I'll ever forget. And to be honest with you guys, we have gotten a lot of good movies in the MCU, good to great films, but Shang-Chi, for an origin movie, what it does to separate itself is really provide the best hand-to-hand combat and fight choreography that we've ever seen, with a dose of this human element that really could only be felt both by the amazing direction by Destin Cretton and also these incredible performances led by Simu Liu. This cast is star-studded. There's a lot of stars in the making, but also I love the fact that there are some legacy actors here that really just elevate this film and put it on a different level for the MCU. Not only does it provide some amazing connections for the rest of the universe, but Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is quite honestly one of the most rewatchable films in the entire cinematic universe. So yes guys, I love this film. I give it an A, and I do think you should see it if you can safely in theaters. If not, 45 days after its theatrical release, it's expected to hit Disney+. So there you have it. Those are my spoiler-free thoughts on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. But again, I want to know what you guys have to say about the film. So go ahead and get loud down below in the comments and let me know, did you love it as much as me? Were you in the middle, or were you disappointed? And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big red button below. Subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, y'all, and hit the thumbs up button, because this week we got What If? We got my reaction to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 17. We got my review for Candyman. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm out of breath already, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening.